Hi, my name is Dr. Scott Young with Matt Moore here of Crypto More, right?
That's right,
Okay.
CryptoMore.com.
And so with CryptoMore.com, and we're going to talk a lot about NESARA, but we're going to talk about what does it mean, what does NESARA mean on a basic level, but we're going to give you a few proofs that are in there. We're going to talk about blockchain technology, and then we're going to talk about what it means down the road. Coming right up. Okay, so when we think about, this is just a quick introduction of who you are again,
Sure.
So people, if they've seen it for the first time, kind of wondered about who you are. So.
Yes, my name's Matt. I am a cryptocurrency fanatic. A lot of people, that scares them, but at the same time, I feel like the technology and just the general idea has a place in the future, and so I'm a big advocate of letting people know the differences between what's evolving right now. So I would encourage you, if you're watching this, don't shy away from this subject, because we're going to talk a lot about some really cool stuff, especially this technology. But if you're interested in learning more about this, or myself, I do these presentations all the time here in the city, all over the country. I was just in Dallas doing a presentation to a church down there. But CryptoMore.com is my website. I have a YouTube channel that's by the name Crypto More, where I create videos on a regular basis.
And it's really cool too. I mean, it's going to give you some good things because Matt's really easy to listen to. It's not like a hard, like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes I get that because people go, "You're fire hosing me." But,
Okay.
And yet, I think you can do that because you're that intelligent. But sometimes it also you have a way to kind of make it a little easier for
down.
people. Yeah. So.
Well, especially with a technology like blockchain. I mean, it's so new, but also it's kind of complicated if you're very unfamiliar with it.
Well, let's just talk about blockchain and the post office blockchain. Well, I mean,
sure.
So can you talk a little about blockchain, what it is, and then tell me a little bit about this new patent that came out with blockchain on the post office?
Sure. Well, the cool thing about blockchain technology, and the easiest way to illustrate it, and for simplicity reasons, imagine having an old book, an old ledger book, that people would write transactions in or records in, right? And this book has pages, right? Well, a blockchain is essentially a software program that is running on thousands, if not millions, of computers around the world. And this software is essentially that ledger book, but it's the same program running at the same time on all of these computers simultaneously. Wow. Okay? And so if you could imagine each one of those pages in that book would be like a block. And when you take those pages and put them together, you've got a blockchain. That's the easiest way for me to illustrate it. But for an example, if I were to, let's say, send Scott some Bitcoin, I would get his public address and I would put it into my wallet, send him some money. Well, when that transaction is broadcasted onto this decentralized network, what happens is that transaction goes into a pool of unconfirmed transactions. And these computers from all around the world are grabbing transactions from this pool and placing them in a block. Okay? Then what happens is the network, these computers, are all competing to solve a very complex mathematical equation. And the first computer that solves that equation wins the right to add their block to the blockchain. Wow. And then the rest of the computers have to discard their blocks back into the pool of unconfirmed transactions, and then the process starts all over again.
Right.
And that winning computer that solved the problem is rewarded with newly minted Bitcoin, and the last Bitcoin will be mined in the year 2140. So that's kind of a 30,000 foot view and understanding of how this decentralized ledger system actually works. And the beautiful thing about it, and the reason why it's going to be changing, they say that there are industry killers. Well, blockchain is going to be a serial killer of multiple industries, because you can not only record transactions on there, you can record votes, you can record card titles. You can record all sorts of things.
But you can privately look at it too. I mean, so there can't be like 18 Scott Youngs. Well, there are, but 18 Scott Youngs that are trying to give money to Matt Morris, which there's plenty of Matt Morris in the world, kind of thing. And it becomes more of a privacy spot too, correct?
So so essentially, you would have a unique ID.
Right.
And let's say another Scott has a unique ID.
Right.
And so his unique ID, whether it's his wallet address or whether it's some form of a identification process that's on the blockchain, there's something unique about it. And that's what makes blockchain really cool, is because for the first time in human history, we have a form of technology that creates digital scarcity. And that's hard for people to wrap their mind around it, because we're so used to copying and pasting digital information that it doesn't make sense to people. But the reason why that's able to happen is because these computers are coming to consensus at the same time all the time, 24 hours. And if somebody were to try to do something fraudulent by, let's say, either trying to reverse a transaction or just something that just doesn't fit, that's not authentic, that's not unique, the system will realize that, wait a minute, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, we're going to reject that. And so that's the cool thing about it. And really the only way that you could compromise a network is in what they call a 51% attack. Right. And that's when you have over 51% of the entire computing power of that network. And that's what's really cool about things like Bitcoin, is because Bitcoin has been around for so long and has continued to grow and people continue to utilize this ledger system. It has become the most secure computer network in the world. Just in the year 2014, the entire network had more computing power combined than more computing power than the top 500 supercomputers combined.
And now it's been introduced with the quantum financial system.
Yes,
that's even made it much deeper capable technology too, because the old system. One of the things he's talking a little bit about is that we have the old Western Union, right? So if I want to send money to Matt way in Utah from Tulsa kind of thing, I go down to Western Union and kind of give the money, and it goes through this chain of things, not chain, I want to say blockchain, but
sure.
An issue, and someone's always taking a cut of that. And that's fine for, the time. And that's where we also get these check cashing places, right? So they're taking a cut in there. The reality is that, money transfers in the old Federal Reserve, the SWIFT program, was 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
But in the new quantum financial system, the QFS, we're talking about seconds.
Sure, yeah.
And so it's a quick kind of thing with that. But so talk to me a little bit about, the big issue. We're sitting in the middle of September of 2020. And there's the post office. There's all these scams, like, people, harvesting ballots and adding, billions or millions of people into the ballot kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, no, that is it's scary, because things can easily be forged and manipulated in that system. But if you had a blockchain system in which voting took place on, it works very similar. Instead of money transactions, it's just recording of votes, and each voter has a unique ID. And so I think in the future, especially with the post office patent on a blockchain product that allows for us to vote that way, I think is going to probably change the game in how things are done. I don't know what the future holds. I just know that that's kind of the overall direction that I've kind of been noticing, not just in the financial world, but in other realms of society as well.
Right. And so, I think everyone's had their network hacked. Yep. They've had, I remember several years ago, I'm trying to pay my taxes with my accountant, and someone had tried to take money out under my name. Some guy in Atlanta has got, hundreds of IDs, and he's done tax returns under my ID. So now my Social Security number is completely compromised in that way. and I have to get these stupid letters from the IRS all the time. I have to use that ID along with mine and the tax ID, and it just gets so messed up.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is, you've got a way of foolproofing it.
Sure.
In
sure.
essence, right? So that's the privacy level. And by the way, that's the part of NESARA, the National Economic Security and Recovery Act.
A mouthful of words.
Yeah, it's like, well, I don't know. Yeah, so, and down the road, there will be GESARA, pretty quickly with that, which is a global issue because each of the countries are going to be on their own precious metal standard. And so that's a big question mark that people have.
Sure.
Is this financial reset. So let's talk a little bit about some of those proofs that you are seeing now that it's really happening, because that's what people ask this question.
Yeah. So whether it's the NESARA, GESARA, or the Great Reset, which are two different things.
Right.
The bad guys have a plan, the good guys have a plan, and I truly believe that when you look at what's taking place historically, when you look at what's taking place on an individual level, and even key appointments in our government. And I've made videos about this before, but some of the things that stand out to me the most when it comes to our system changing is a gentleman by the name of Brian Brooks, who worked for the largest cryptocurrency exchange in America, was recently appointed to the Office of Comptroller of the Currency. Okay.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Very cool. So obviously he's a big proponent of cryptocurrency.
Wow.
And he has been on record. There's actually YouTube videos of him being interviewed talking about how the private sector is going to be providing a technology like blockchain technology, and the government should implement this technology. And who do you think he's been in conversation with on a regular basis? And it's the team that developed XRP, or the company better known as Ripple. And so there is a trend taking place here. And then even with Judy Shelton, who's a Fed nominee, a big fan of a gold standard. And then you've got the Federal Reserve, whether you think it's good or bad, they have come out and they have not only been studying how to implement a cryptocurrency version of the dollar, but they've also admitted, like, hey, we have to be on top of this because China has already launched their version of a cryptocurrency, and if that takes hold and gets adoption worldwide, then it jeopardizes the dollar for having the world reserve currency status. So even, whether it's called NESARA, GESARA, or whether you call it the Great Reset, things are happening beneath the surface, and then you've got the post office filing this patent for the blockchain voting, and so that's on my end. On the cryptocurrency side of things, those are some of the big things that I'm seeing, that when the changes do come, which line up with historical cycles in the monetary system, it only makes sense that they are going to try to push for a digital type cryptocurrency. Now, whether it's backed by gold, that would be my assumption, because if a government wants to really compete with a free market technology or free market money, because I am of the opinion that there are going to be two systems rising. There's going to be a centralized system and a decentralized system. But the best way for a government to undermine a free market money like Bitcoin is if they were to go back and back these digital assets by gold or by a bucket of precious metals. There's multiple ways that they could do it. Now, the argument of whether that needs to be done or not, that can be had for another episode. But you have to restore faith and confidence in the money system.
But I think that's part of the point. As people hear these words, that they're like, "What? I don't even know what these words are," right? So you're saying a fiat currency is a currency that's just, it's ketchup packets.
Yeah.
It's whatever you believe that it's worthwhile. Mm-hmm. Whereas worldwide, over a long period of time, whether it's a diamond or a jewel or some other type of thing that has a currency value that we all value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, there's a very point of value, and gold is one of the easier ones to kind of look at.
Sure.
So the problem with fiat currency is that there's no value based upon it.
Yeah.
It's whatever the heck the Federal Reserve has done. And so one of the cooler parts of of losing the Federal Reserve, and you're going, and I've had this conversation with this. Cooler parts of losing the Federal Reserve. By the way, the Second CARES Act pulled through the PPP, shoved the Federal Reserve underneath the Treasury Department. Never has happened before.
Sure.
They're not getting to do anything. And the financial people are freaking out. They don't understand that part.
Sure. Yeah.
And that freaks them out. So let me share another proof, and then I want you to pitch out why this doesn't make any sense or what your feeling is. So one of the things that everyone's noticing is that there's no change.
Yeah.
Like, you go in Tulsa, there's Quick Trip or gas station or pharmacy kind of thing, and you give $5 and it's $4.37, so they're going to give you that 63 cents of change.
Yep.
What now the government statement or the media statement, let's probably put it this way, is it's COVID.
Yeah.
And what's silly about that is, let's say Matt has a local hardware store in a really small town. Let's just limit it, okay? And inside the hardware store is a little bit of groceries, and he's got a little pharmacy over there. He's a one-stop shop, okay? And so he has an amount of coins, and no one's gotten out, okay, in Matt's store in his town.
Sure.
Scott hasn't gotten out too, because I'm terrified of COVID kind of thing. I'm standing and freaking out, but I've got an amount of coins and an amount of cash. And the answer is, well, it's because there's not been any transfer of that. I'm like, wait, you still have the same amount of coins and I still have the same amount of coins. How is that not the case? You've not been asking for coins from the system.
Sure.
So how do you, address
What's my take on that?
Yeah.
So, what's my take on why we're having a shortage?
Yeah, why we think we're having the shortage.
I think it's eerily, a big eerie coincidence, okay, if you want to call it a coincidence, when you even have the U.S. Mint saying that they don't have enough ways to produce both gold and silver at the same time. Like, they are having a minting problem. Okay, now
coins aren't gold. Coins aren't gold and silver based. But they used to be, right?
Used to be,
right?
Yeah.
So So go ahead.
So my assumption is, when I look at what's taking place with the coin shortage, when I take a look at who's been appointed to the comptroller of the currency, when I look at the Fed nominee, when I look at the World Economic Forum coming out and saying we need to have a great reset, when I look at giant banks like Bank of America and JP Morgan coming out and saying that they want a cashless society, two and two are starting to add up. But I'm interested to see how this unfolds, because, like I said from the beginning, there's kind of two agendas trying to be played out right now.
Yeah, there are.
And so if two of them are playing out, obviously our hope is that the good one would win out. But regardless of what happens, I'm still hedging my bet, and I'm still trying to educate people to understand the difference of when this system does manifest and we move into a cashless society. What are our options? Are we still able to trade with each other, under the table, which cash provides, okay? And I know that sounds, scary or nefarious, but at the end of the day, if we are going to participate in a cashless society and I don't have the option to trade with you whenever I want or whoever I want, that can be a scary scenario. So and trust me, I'm gonna be voting for Trump. I'm praying for Trump. I hope Trump implements the right system. I hope he takes us back to sound money and that he allows the free market to still compete in the realm of money. But at the end of the day, we got to be smart about this.
Yeah, and I think we just can't we can't hope for this. But I think one of the things that I'm bothered with is that there's not any information, and that's what we're trying to do for you here today. So, one of the things that we all know is that change and the paper money has to have a cycle of usage. Paper money obviously going to rip up quicker, and if you're in Florida, I mean, that thing kind of melts almost after a time, so you have to jump it out. But I find it fascinating with that coin issue is that they're saying the stupid things like, well, we don't have the metals to put in it anymore. What are you talking about?
It actually costs more to make it. I mean, it's a loss for them.
Exactly, and so, but I think it's one of the most powerful points of NESARA is that is actually happening is that it's out of commission.
Yeah, it has. The old money has to be taken out.
Yeah, so you've got to rip away. Now, the first thing you have to rip away are the coins.
Yeah,
and when you see, the coins are gone. Because here's what happens: if Matt's that hardware store that the all one-stop shopping, if he's not going to the bank, he doesn't get his weekly allotment of change that he's got to have on hand, and he's doing credit cards and other things like that too, and checks and other things. But he's got his allotment that he's not pulling.
Sure.
Which means that there should be a huge running ton of change at the banks, and the banks don't have it.
Yeah.
So that is one of the most powerful points that says NESARA is already in play.
Sure.
Because what you just said, you've got to wipe it away. You've got to pull the old fiat out of circulation.
Yeah, and I think it's important too for people to not get caught up in the title NESARA GESARA.
Yeah.
It's the idea behind NESARA and GESARA is that there is a change happening because let's say Trump knows about this material, these laws that were written, what was it, back in the 80s, these ideas started to manifest, was that he may not come out and say, hey guys, we're going to launch NESARA GESARA. You know what I mean? It may be...
He might call it some other weird name.
Sure.
And he probably will. And so don't get too upset about NESARA and GESARA or however you want to say it. Or, I know Santa Surfing likes to say Trump SARA and kind of thing. And I'm fine with whatever that is. But the concept is there.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's one of the things. So we're going to wrap up here in just a second. But I want to share with you another thing that was powerful. And I have hesitated to share this one as a point of transfer. Okay, so I think it was May 27th, I closed on a house, or actually refinanced my house. Now, I bought more houses I can count. I've refied loans so many times. Now, I knew that I wouldn't have a payment on June 1, right? So it had to be like July 1, and you kind of get that little off time. And but it's late June, and I still haven't gotten the paperwork in. And and then there's this company called Caliber that kind of puts it out. I'd heard some paperwork, but I don't even have the loan papers. I don't have the loan number, and I don't have the the little check thing that they would give you. Rip it off and send it off, or some type of paper thing. But I get a really strange letter, and the letter is from Fannie Mae. And it's in it says that Fannie Mae has bought your loan, but don't write us a check for this. Write it to your company. And I'm like, I actually literally had to have other people read this because I'm like, what? I don't understand.
Yeah.
No, Fannie Mae, as Matt knows, Fannie Mae was purchased over because they went belly up during the 2008 crisis. It's underneath the Federal Reserve. Scott's house got shifted into the Federal Reserve's balance sheet.
Yeah.
Now, some people will say, well, yeah, that happens all the time because you're going to have, because these companies can't afford having that thing on their balance sheet.
Yeah.
But wait a second, my house is under that. I didn't share this until I had another person that had the exact same thing happen.
Sure.
He buys his first house in Broken Arrow here in the Tulsa area, and he got the same letter. And so I think that's one of the other points of the NESARA that I want to we'll end up here on that point, is that there's a debt killing that will happen. These things that are on, these, and we're going to talk about fractional conversations here, the next video here with that. But there's this gross thing that's been happening over more than 100 years in the way this fractional system happens. And so they're going to have to kill off all of those debts. Those are two of the more powerful things, or the three powerful things here we've said. The blockchain technology that is going to, revamp the whole system.
Sure.
That's the backbone of it, right? And then we've said, a little bit of the coin shortage is another little point. And then I'm kind of bringing up this little thing of, wait a second, in the background, something that's never existed. And trust me, I mean, I've bought and done dozens and dozens of loans and never received that thing. You might say, that sounds flimsy. It's never happened before. And no one can answer exactly why it shows up that way.
Well, I mean, speaking of what never has happened before, I mean, the Federal Reserve going into this season has become the buyer of last resort. And I've been predicting that for a very long time.
Yep.
Because in order to prop up the market, they've got to buy up everything. So it's like they're buying corporate bonds, and they're buying this over here, and they're buying this over there.
And guess what? Trump is making them do it. And he's making them do it. And then it's exactly what would happen if you're about ready to go to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So if you were going to bankruptcy, you'd buy up everything you could. You'd buy TVs and watches and all these other things that they couldn't get back from you, and then you'd go to bankruptcy.
Then you sink the Fed.
And that's where we're talking about. I just saw a bumper sticker, "End the Fed." I thought that was fascinating with that too. So anyway, Matt has a book here that I think is a really kind of cool book. It's called Foundations of Liberty. It's a very easy read. It's not 85 pages.
Yeah, it's 91.
91. Okay,
Yeah.
I was close. And I have a new book that's coming out really, really soon called NESARA and the Mark of the Beast.
Yep.
It's coming out really soon. It'll be on drscottyoung.com. CryptoMore.com.
Yep.
But on both of our channels, I want you to watch this because it's really powerful information. So we're going to give you some more of that. But subscribe, like us, and ask questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks so much.